Hi there. It's time to look at Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin Cash again. This week is pretty phenomenal because for almost 3 months, uh, the price of Bitcoin has gone above the 74K line the second time, but this time it reached an even higher point, almost closing to 80,000. Before we get started, if you're new to my session, I'll cover the Wyckoff stage of each of the projects, their potential price trend change, as well as key price levels. These are education content, not financial advice. So let's start with the daily chart this time, okay? A bit different from the past. What we talked about was that on the 9th, the price of Bitcoin bounced out from the bottom edge, okay? Here, right over here, of the medium-term uptrend. And then eventually we said, okay, after this, if it breaks above the key level of 68K, it is going to go back to challenge the 74K. How far it could go? Look at this longer uptrend over here, the ceiling. If we line up this point and this point over here, extend the line, we get to this level, very close to the 80,000. So last week it said, looking at the trend right now, if it breaks above the 74K and go challenge the ceiling of the uptrend, you can see the tendency of it going to reach to the blue key level of 80,500. All right, currently yesterday it received a little bit of resistance. Today, even though the candlestick is about, the body size I'm talking about is about a half of what we see yesterday, the volume is actually very low, okay? The tricky part is that the situation in the Middle East is going to create a lot of these kind of fluctuations, one day up, one day down, and longer candles than before, okay? Like Strait of Hormuz, who blockade first, and then the other one said blockade, and then ceasefire, open Hormuz, and then now the Hormuz is closed again. So that's going to trigger a lot of these kind of trade by the news, but that shouldn't affect you in assessing the long-term situation, okay? So this is still on the trajectory to challenge the upside. And in order to measure that, we can draw this channel box. And this time, this is an uptrend. So we try to line up, okay, these spots on the top, as well on the top, okay? You see right at the time yesterday, when it gets close to the ceiling, it gets rejected. And then the bottom side of the candles, let me tighten this up. So I'm trying to line up this point and this point. Okay, close enough. Not, sometimes, especially these type of shorter trends, there is a bit of a gap in some instances, okay? And that's fine. And if we look at what's going on over here, assuming this uptrend channel continue to play its role, the price will continue to trade along here. Let's see next few days whether the price is still finding support on this line. If it doesn't, if it falls back to the 74K and eventually come back to the 68 to challenge the bottom of the bigger uptrend, and if it breaks below it, that's a big warning sign, because we later on will get to the bigger picture in the weekly view. So just quickly pull in the date over here. Okay, if this uptrend continues, this mini uptrend forms a triangle with the, or you can say a wedge with the 80,500 key level. That date points to the 1st of May. So from now till the 1st of May, assuming the uptrend is still continuing, okay? So let's say it travels along this towards this wedge. Okay, this is an interesting situation, right? Because if the price continues to trade and before it gets to 28th of April, okay, that's where the biggest ceiling crosses the blue line, the blue key level. If it passes through it earlier, that means it is also breaking outside of this larger uptrend. And the sustainability of that momentum, it has to be proved by increased volume, because that's not the trajectory since early February. Okay, so for the next 10 days, 10 to 12 days, that's very key. Okay, so let's get to the bigger picture. Given we have mentioned the dates of potential price trend change, we talk about these three key levels over here, and the big picture, the Wyckoff. For Bitcoin, you can see it is still like a bounce up from the sign of weakness over here back in February. I said before, if Bitcoin is not going back to the lower level to accumulate, this orange section over here, and started accumulate early at this point, at a higher price level, we have to continue to observe whether that's the case. For the time being, I'm more inclined to define this as the late stage of distribution. And in order for that to, how should I put this? If it is still in distribution, let's put it this way. There is a phase, according to the Wyckoff method, that hasn't happened, because after the uprise, there can be upthrust after distribution, meaning the crazy FOMO can still happen if the environment allows. Okay, maybe a liquidity, risk on mode, all kinds of positive sentiments, etc., etc. But just that when we look at the news, we don't see those factors lining up. Okay, people may be speculating what the new Fed chair would do. They will print money, yada yada yada. So if those happen before the price drops further because of the situation in Middle East, whether it's causing stagflation, recession, private credit risk, there are two forces fighting right now. And that's why we're getting through this uncertainty situation. And whichever side wins, that's going to push the price to either direction. So the upthrust of the distribution is a phase where all the positives line up, and that's when the price may have a chance to come up to challenge the previous high. The downside, okay, if it's not the positive, but the negatives all line up, then this, I've already mentioned in a couple of sessions before, resembles the 2022 crash in a very similar sense. Okay, two LPSYs, not this one, sorry, this first one, the PS period over here. So one leg up, the second mini leg up. This time we are a little bit different. We've got one leg up, the second leg is a little bit longer and higher as well. So two legs up before the final drop comes in. So if that happens, that's when we talk about, okay, the first support level would be around 51,500. That's where the reaccumulation bottom was. Okay? And then, if it is so bad, the situation is so bad to the point where a lot of liquidity has been sucked out of Bitcoin, and people just go to park to somewhere absolutely safe, or they have to cash out to pay their debt or margin calls, the 35,500 would be the next level. That's where the sign of weaknesses of the previous distribution cycle back in 2021, as well as the high, okay, when the price first shot above the accumulation cycle in 2023 was. That's around 30,000 to 35,000. This is the range. Okay, you see the lows here and also the peak over here. If you say, hey, what if it is so catastrophic? That challenged the long-term playground as well, because once the price of Bitcoin gets to this 30,000 to 35,000 range, that's already the bottom of the long-term playground, based on the hypothesis that Bitcoin is gaining value over time, or its base price is rising over time because of money printing. That's why this line is trending upwards, not a flat line. If you say, hey, what if that's not the case, if it can go back to the 2022 level, okay, just to stay above the peak back in 2017, okay, that's the apocalypse situation, okay, that's around the 16 to 20,000. Not that is not possible, but that's not what I'm seeing it is going to happen unless some unforeseeable factors show up. After all these chaos that's already, on the surface of the water, like the private credit risk, the war in the Middle East. If something even worse shows up, we talk about the 51,000 level, 30,000 level. What else? What's the third one? Okay, assuming stagflation and recession is going to bring Bitcoin's price to this point before money printing announcement. Okay, if the governments are going to print money, that's going to likely, if nobody is going to cash out from Bitcoin for whatever reason, that should keep Bitcoin's price or give Bitcoin's price a bounce. Okay, what is going to make it going down to here is a big question mark right now. Okay, but you don't want to speculate too much. Next, Ethereum. Ethereum here is still going through the uptrend, and it broke outside of the bigger downtrend that started summer last year around August. Okay, so last week we talked about by the time we get closer and closer to the 19th, we would be able to see the trend change confirmation. And indeed, a few days back, especially on Monday, okay, last Saturday, the time that we had our session, is still not a solid confirmation, because on the very next day, on Sunday, the price got pushed back into the bigger channel. But Monday, that confirmed that it is breaking out of the downtrend with not a low volume. Okay, if it is a tiny little volume bar, it's probably not something solid, but it is above average. So that confirms that this uptrend is continuing, right? So if you're new to these channel boxes, remember what I said. Imagine they are air hockey table, right? The puck basically bounce between the boundaries. And that's what's happening right now. And there's also a center line as well. So that's why you see sometimes when the price gets to somewhere around center, not exactly 50%, okay, 130 over here. Sometimes it's skewed towards one of the edges. Here, you see these bounces goes up and then bounce again, getting resistance for a while before it breaks above. Okay, so the key here is after April 19th, it is still going to challenge the ceiling as well as the 2500. So last time we talked about the 2500 key level, the orange key level over here. If this mini uptrend is going to continue, okay, that's supposed to be the support line, okay, this one, for this mini uptrend. If some people say it is going to be very bullish for Ethereum, let's see whether that's the case, because it is getting to two challenges in a very short period of time. So the very first one is this one. This uptrend going to test the 2500 line. It hasn't reached that point yet. Yesterday was close enough. Yesterday's reached 2,465, $35 from that orange key level. But by the 26th, if the price continues to travel along this support line, let's change it to a different color. Okay, this green, no, yellow support line over here. That's the time it has to confirm. Is the uptrend going to break above the 2,500, or is it going to break the uptrend and comes back down to the center line of the channel, or even bounce to the bottom and do this thing again before it breaks above the 2,500? Okay, if it does, after 2,500, it is going to challenge the ceiling of the uptrend. Okay, not yet 2,700 because it's not there yet. It may take a little longer. Like I said, it may bounce off from the center line and travel on the stronger half of the channel. And by the time it gets to later in May, the chance will get stronger and stronger. Okay, let's adjust these. 26th of April, and then eventually, that's over here, 29th of April. That's getting close to when the price is going to challenge the ceiling of the uptrend. Okay, so a lot of decision points coming in the next 10, 12 days. And from the big picture perspective, we talk about Ethereum is potentially going through the early stage of accumulation, because when we look at what happened over here back in 2022 all the way to 2020, end of 2023, January 2024 actually, that was the accumulation period. And the top of the accumulation period back then was exactly between 1800 to about 2100. Look at this SOS over here, the sign of strength. So we say if Ethereum is going through the same long-term playground like Bitcoin, this yellow box over here, okay, instead of a flat bottom, the price this time has gone to very close to the bottom of that channel. So that's why I said the likelihood of this being the beginning of accumulation is higher than the case of Bitcoin. And looking at what happened over here, this may be the automatic rally that we have been waiting to see. And let's see whether that's the case, because also for Ethereum in the 2025 cycle, it dropped from the buying climax. Thus, from the upthrust, dipped to the accumulation level, and then quickly rebounded to the next form. So technically speaking, the scenario for Bitcoin that I mentioned, the upthrust of the distribution for this cycle hasn't happened. It may still be able to happen in that way, just that I'm not seeing it right now. Okay, it's more like the automatic rally instead of it going up to the upthrust. But we'll see soon. Okay, if it is really in accumulation, be cautious that even though the selling climax, the panic over period may be over, okay, like what happened over here, what happened afterwards is a series of tests where the whales are going to shake out the paper hands before they let the price launch to the new high. Sometimes it lasts pretty long. It can be 2 or even over 2 years. Sometimes it lasts only a month or 2. Okay, so that's why we see the test over here. When the price comes back down, it can go to the prior low support key level or even lower, depending on the situation. So in this case, the low was the 1800. Sorry, the light blue key level over here. Okay, so just to understand, while you're riding this wave, hoping it goes higher and higher than before, there is a chance that this trend or this accumulation hasn't fully finished yet. Of course, if it developed into something like what happened back in 2024 August or 25 June, that's great news for whoever have bought Ethereum and ride this wave. So let's see. All right, Bitcoin Cash. Again, starting from the daily chart, we see it is still within the bigger downtrend. It has been testing the ceiling. We talked about this, that when we get closer to the 18th, meaning today, we will see the possibility of Bitcoin Cash breaking outside of this downtrend that started somewhere near the end of March. We're coming back to challenge the 427 orange key level and confirms, okay, this support is strong enough, and then it breaks outside of that downtrend just to come up high enough to challenge the ceiling of this bigger downtrend. Okay? So what's next is 29th of April, where the ceiling of the downtrend crosses the 427 orange key level again. So if the price continues to trade along this triangle, by the time we get closer to the end of this month, another decision point comes in. Okay, whether the downtrend, the big downtrend of Bitcoin Cash is finally over, or is it going to break the 427 level and continues with this downtrend and go to challenge the 379? Because look at what happened back in 2025. That was the level where about a month or a half, roughly more than a month of trading was very active along this range. From a big picture perspective, we talked about the sign of weakness and then the last point of support, that mini rally that came up. Okay, so I can remove this question mark. If I change it to the line chart, you can see, okay, the sign of weakness, and then this little peak over here, and then we have a second peak. That's very common observable behavior of patterns. And look at the level. It is currently around the level when the price, or before the price shot up to the last line climax. So it is, technically speaking, still not fully within the accumulation level yet compared to 2025. Or even this low, this reaccumulation back in September 2024, August, September time. So for Bitcoin Cash, the long-term playground, this big white box, is of a flat bottom. Okay, you see the lows back in 2002, 2003, compared to that of 2018, they were at the same level. That's different for the case for Ethereum, okay? In the case of Bitcoin, both had a higher low back in 2022-23 compared to 2017-18, that period. So the Bitcoin Cash, that's why the long-term playground doesn't have that higher and higher base. If that's the case, if the face of Bitcoin Cash is flat, or even if it's not going to come back to the 108 level, if we look at the closer time frame, 2025, February, March, it came down to as low as somewhere between the 225 to 270, the two blue key levels. Okay, if bad things happen, like I said in the beginning, if all the negative factors line up, at least that's going to push the price back to that 2025 low. If the positives line up, obviously the upwards of the distribution hasn't happened yet. So it is at the crossroad now. It is still within that trend that I mentioned. Okay, that happened, you can say, beginning of the year, but if you look at here, we have the exact day, like during January 10th. Okay, after a bit of sideways, it's coming down. Some people will say, hey, this is a blue flag. It will break out and, make it bounce. That's totally possible. If you look at what happened over here, these peaks, the subsequent peaks after the higher peak above 679, the blue level, they somehow get rejected by the 600 key level line. If you look at the bigger picture, that's where the initial FOMO and the second test were. Okay, also the second test back in 2024. All right, so that's the crossroads situation for Bitcoin Cash. If you're interested to access these sessions 2 days earlier, like the other members, join the channel membership now. And the dashboard to help you avoid FOMO and panic is now available on Substack for free at the moment. Go check it out. See you in the next video. Thank you.